Hey everyone, it's Stephanie again, and you're tuned into the review of Married at First Sight Season 8, Episode 11. So, first thing, I've been off the whole season. I just realized because I checked the website. So, this is actually Episode 11. For some reason, I thought it was Episode 12, so I've been posting one episode ahead, but I've been reviewing the right episode though, so that's what counts. So, this is Episode 11. Let's just jump into it because there was so much that happened on last night's episode. First, let's kick it off with Wil and Jasmine. So a lot of you guys talked about the exercise last week, and I even went back and I looked, and I thought I missed it, but it was the exercise from this week. So Wil and Jasmine have this homework that let me back it up. Jasmine decides that she is going to try a little bit more. She's recognizing that he needs to be intellectually stimulated, that they kind of missed the mark. She's starting to hear the constant need for effective communication from him. And so she dresses up. She, has her little sexy outfit on. She makes dinner and they do this exercise. No matter what we think of Jasmine, because I know a lot of you guys don't like her, I do my best to remain objective, meaning some weeks I'll like what she has going on, some weeks I won't. Some weeks I'll like what Wil has going on, some weeks I won't, because I just want to see the human perspective, the human experience, and kind of how these people are listening to each other and making changes and being effective. So I applaud her for trying this week because we've seen her not try. And in real life, because I try to mirror these things to how does this show up in real life? Sometimes we ask for things and then when we get them, we kind of shut people down because we're so busy being in our rant for asking. So I was glad to see her try. She's saying, listen, he wants to be more intellectually stimulated. Let me do the best that I know how. It may have not been, what everybody thought she should have done, or maybe she should have taken a different course, but I'm glad to see her finally start getting the message and, asking him questions and trying to create a dialogue. Wil fell short for me in just his experience throughout dinner. He was very tight, and Wil is wound very tight. And here's the thing with Wil and Jasmine. I think they have a lot of similarities, which is probably why they were matched. But I also think that they have a lot of similarities, which is probably why they might bump heads. They're both very comfortable in their own space, and they're both saying they want to change, they want to grow, they want to have these things, but they are very true to themselves. There isn't much flexibility on either side. And I think for Jasmine, we see her offenses as being much louder. We can say, oh, she's nagging and she, puts him down, or whatever it is that we can say about her that is overt. And so everybody gives Wil a slide, but I see just as many issues with him. His offenses are just a little bit quieter. So last night, some of them showed up. The way he addressed her during dinner, and because I know that people are going to say, well, he's checked out. He doesn't have to do that. Well, if we're still expecting Jasmine to give 110% to this experiment, then we should expect Wil to do the same if he's constantly saying that he still wants to grow. And we see in certain parts of each episode there's still a chance, even though he might be frustrated in some ways, he's still willing. I don't see the overt effort on his part. So they have a dinner. The dinner's okay. I mean, it seems to be going really well. They go to the kissing exercise. The kissing exercise was to kiss each other for at least 1 minute. So they time it. Of course, she initiates it because she's ready to up the ante. What I will say about Jasmine is she's trying. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, she is trying. Wil is very complacent. He is very cold. He is very tight. And it shows in that exercise. The exercise is a little awkward. I think it would be for most people because you're timing it. It's 1 minute. So you're doing this and then this is a new person. And then you have cameras and you have all these things. But I think the way that he responded really let me down. And it clearly deflated Jasmine as well. And that's part of the problem. So if we take it back, during dinner, they talk about some of his past insecurities and things like that. And he shares that, he felt almost, I'll identify it as not feeling good enough. He didn't measure up. He didn't understand why those relationships didn't work out. It didn't really make sense to him. Wil still carries those insecurities and the way that he goes about this relationship and probably every other relationship before this. And if this doesn't work out, the next relationships until he makes a change. He's still caring about some sort of insecurity. He's saying that he doesn't, you know, he listens to affirmations and he's made changes, and I'm sure in some ways he has, but he's still very limited in the way that he communicates, and is open. And it's fine to maybe not like the way that your partner presents, but like the initiative he lacks, period. And it would be with somebody else as well, not just Jasmine. So after they have the kissing exercise, once again, Jasmine is like, excited, you know, we're doing this. I'm excited, like I'm trying. This is me taking initiative, and he pretty much kills it. He pretty much deflates it. And the first thing he says, his response was very top heavy with negativity. First thing is that it's pretty awkward, and it was so mechanical. It didn't include any type of romance. It missed the opportunity to connect. But he's saying he wants to connect. And she's trying to connect with him in the way that he most gets connected. And he gives this, once again, long speech about her love language. And they do have different love languages. But you guys, you don't have to have the same love language to be with someone. You just have to know how to speak the love language of the person. So if your spouse's love language is acts of service, but yours is gift, then you do acts of service. You don't have to love acts of service, but you give acts of service, and they give you gifts, or they give you quality time. And clearly her, you know, love language is quality time, more physical touch. And he really doesn't do that. He really doesn't initiate that. And it's all about Wil. And Wil is not willing, see what I did there, to really step out of his comfort zone to get stimulated as well. He has to take some initiative, especially when you see that person may not started out that way. Maybe show by leading. I mean, this is real life. This is real relationship. It's not like, oh, okay, I tell you what I want, and if I have no idea what it is, or if you have no idea what it is, I just sit there and expect you to do it. In a real relationship, there is some leading. There is some here. This is what I would like. This is what stimulates me. Not blanket. Like, show the person. Take the initiative. And cut them some slack when you see them trying. You know, in real relationships, if you like gifts, for example, and your spouse buys you something, appreciate the effort. And maybe at a different time, kind of like the 6.8, I haven't let that go. At a different time, say, hey, I really appreciate that effort, but I prefer, you know, XYZ. And use it as a opportunity to connect and for them to get to know you and say, you know, I love the effort, but this is what I like. So that person can start to get to know you and really know how to connect with you in your love language. So he could have done that yesterday and said, you know, he could have started with the positive, like, you have soft lips, or he did say that towards the end, like, you're a good kisser. But when he started out so negatively, of course she didn't hear it, which we find out later on in the episode. And it's just, Wil isn't trying, you know, and it's not enough to say, well, he's checked out and she's kind of ruined everything, because then that's relationships. Like, at some point, you're really going to have to get over some of what you're feeling and take the initiative. And good, bad, or ugly, Jasmine takes the initiative, and she can be quite frustrating, but Wil does not take the initiative. Wil is just kind of waiting for things to be. I don't know, like, I really think that she did the best she could, and she's trying to, you know, make a turn and kind of pick up on what she needs to do and figure it out in the way that she thinks, oh, okay, this might be intellectually stimulated. The least he could have done was said, okay, that was great, or something with some air of positivity. He doesn't have that, and that would deflate anyone. So a lot of the insecurity he's carrying around is still projected in his lack of initiative and his lack of openness and willingness. And, you know, both of them are part of the problem. I mean, I don't want to be on a team, but I'm seeing it. It was just, I can't imagine how this week we could not at least take the time to recognize, okay, she's trying to turn a corner. And he, towards the end of the episode, as they were making their way to the mini moon, started to become aware that, hey, you know, maybe I didn't address that in the best way. Maybe I could have said XYZ, because, you know, starting out so negatively, you probably don't hear the positive, which is true. You don't really hear the positive, especially when you're taking the initiative, and especially when you're saying, hey, I really want to step it up in this relationship. It's hard when you're met with such limitation, and I think that she is, whether that's set forth by her previous actions or not. It really doesn't matter, because the reality is, if we gauged our spouses on the previous bad thing that we did, then we would never get anywhere. And that's the reality. And I think that's why I try to have patience, even though sometimes I get so annoyed with seeing these couples sometimes, or seeing what they do. The reality is, in your relationship, if you hang your hat on the last bad thing that you did, then you guys are never going to move forward. Like, you have to move on, you have to acknowledge it, and then you have to make it work. And that's just what it is. And I don't mean that from a space of like you have no choice, but usually relationships have those seasons of ebbs and flows, and that's what it is. So you find a way to like deal with it and acknowledge it and become aware and work to be better. And when you care about somebody, you do that. Because of this experiment, it started, on the flip side. And so they don't have much of that history to, hang their hat on. But the reality is the mechanics are still the same. So that's Wil and Jasmine. They kind of talk about it because she did shut down. They're moving forward, and we will see. So that's Wil and Jasmine. They do really well at the honeymoon. We don't see much of the mini moon, but we see them more of a united front than we see other couples, I think, or than we see like AJ and Stephanie. So speaking of AJ and Stephanie, we'll just jump right to that. AJ and Stephanie. Okay, so this week the couples get together with Pastor Cal to kind of talk about the journey and what's been going on, and if they've fallen in love yet. And AJ and Stephanie are saying that, they're moving towards there and they're falling in love, and they can see that, but neither one is really committed yet. Like I said, I've never gotten that romantic chemistry. I think that they have a great friendship, and I think that they are both on the same page, and therefore the relationship in its time seems to work, like almost like a checkbox. I wanted to be married. This is who I wanted. He likes to eat out like I like to eat out. We both are set in our finances, stuff like that. So I think it works for them, but I don't get like a deep, true love. If anything, they give me like a couple who would be set up on a blind date and it not work out romantically, but they stay the best of friends. And I think that's why we can see them get along well, because I do think they get along well, but I don't get couples vibes from them. I won't ever, because by now I would have gotten it, and I've never gotten it. So the twist to the mini moon, which every season they have a mini moon that happens about a week and a half before decision day, where they really get to reconnect and assess their relationship and take some time out from work and all the outside noise and really focus on what's going to happen before they kind of jump back into, okay, are we going to stay together or not? This season, they decided to put the couples all together in one house. I don't like it at all. I do not like that idea at all. It felt like the Real World, and I'm a Real World fan, like, but the Real World, when it first came out, and it was like so exciting to see 7 strangers picked together. If you guys watch the Real World, you'll remember the intro, and it's about 7 strangers picked together to live a life, and this was not supposed to be that. Like, this was supposed to be something that was as sacred as it can be for what this is and for how jarring this experience is. And it was supposed to let them spend time together and really assess where they are and do that individually. Putting them in a house together just feels so drama filled. It just feels like, oh, this is great for TV. But it's taking away from the purpose of the experiment and the purpose of the mini moon. I don't think that that's a good idea. I don't like seeing it. I don't like the setup. The house looks so tiny on TV. So it feels tiny. It's like, 8 adults in that place. And, it's one thing to get together and have dinner and get to know each other, but then you get to go back to your respective places. But to spend a weekend together, I think that the focus will be on whatever shenanigans pop up, like AJ, rather than focusing on oneself. And like the room now becomes the exit strategy to the drama that's happening with everybody else, not necessarily, the focus on their relationship. So we see AJ pitch a fit Surprise. No surprise there about this whole thing. He walks in. Everyone is there before he gets there. He walks in with a terrible energy, terrible attitude, basically says that this is crazy. He wants to get a hotel. He gets super smashed in terms of his drinking, which is another concern because he already lacks control when he is amped up and very upset when he is not drinking. So the excessive drinking was a concern for me. And, you know, basically people tried to play damage control. Stephanie kind of stepped out and she said she was really tired and she just went to sleep. So she left him with the other couples. That type of behavior to me, though, is reflective of just how she deals with AJ in general. In the confessional, she said something like she's getting to know how to deal with him and it's a little bit easier and you kind of just let him rant and rave and then it stops. To me, that's just, okay, I have to suffer through this behavior. I don't challenge it. I don't address it. And I just pretend it doesn't happen. And that's like a pot, like a tea. It reminds me of a teapot, like slowly getting hotter and hotter and it'll just explode at some point. And he is explosive naturally. So over time, that's going to be something where she's just not going to be able to deal with it. And not challenging that behavior is going to just reaffirm to him that it's acceptable and it's not. And so she ends up leaving, and it's just reflective of how she handles him in general. She may not physically leave, but if you've looked at her in some scenes, she checks out. Like her eyes are like, I'm out of here, because she just doesn't like to be in that environment. And I don't blame her. But, you know, she leaves, so everybody else pretty much has to babysit him, and he's just really obnoxious all around. So I don't see, you know, Stephanie and AJ lasting too long because he has no control. Their dynamic, to me, doesn't have longevity. And there's a lot of stuff that is not being addressed that, you know, really is the foundation of a relationship. Like, she clearly doesn't look like she feels safe, and I don't think she is safe. So I think that, you know, with Stephanie and AJ, they might be the one to watch for this episode or for this season, just for the sake of what it might appear to be in terms of a good couple. But when you really look beyond the surface, there's a lot going on there that just isn't handled. And he asked an obnoxious question to the other couples, saying something along the lines of, you know, are you guys upset that we're doing so well? That the fact that he even asked that is, so many red flags are going off to me about that level of narcissism and that level of inappropriateness and that level of a lack of awareness, because you guys are not doing that well. So that is Stephanie and AJ. I'm sure that things will continue to develop, and mainly on AJ's side, because he seems to be the star, and not in the great way, but the star of that relationship and how it goes and how it feels, and if it'll move on or not. So that is Stephanie and AJ. Next, we have Keith and Kristine. We didn't have much going on with Keith and Kristine. They have been laying low the last few episodes. They are pretty consistent, nothing out of the ordinary that I remember. I do recall when Pastor Cal was talking about falling in love at dinner, and I love how he describes, you know, falling in love as being that decision, that intentional decision, rather than waiting on a feeling, and identifying falling in love and being in love as feeling good, because, you know, feelings are fleeting. Emotions are ever changing, and you can't hang your hat on that if you want to truly love someone and commit to them. So I love that he explained that to them. But he did ask the couples who's in love, and it was interesting to see Keith kind of chime up and say, you know, I'm getting there, or he almost looks like he is, you know, like whether that's the pink cloud and he's doesn't really know, but he feels it, or whether that's accurate. But we see Kristine kind of look around like, not it, you know. So that was interesting to see, because Kristine, I think, as the more that this experiment has gone on, I've seen her become a little more reserved, a little more restricted, and a little more unsure of their dynamic. And maybe she's just thinking about it from the wholeness of the experience. And we're beyond, you know, the first month. We're beyond meeting at the altar and the honeymoon and meeting family. We're beyond all of that, and now it's time to really look at what this stuff looks like. So I did notice that apprehension from her, and I found that to be interesting. But other than that, Keith and Kristine are kind of still floating along. I still think they have the most potential. And the fact that they have come to each other, especially Keith, so unprepared, but they're still making it work. They still find a way to bond as long as they get on the same page in terms of like reality and not be so emotional. Like Keith is very emotional in the sense of like, I want a baby now, I want to do all these things, and he's not really thinking logically. But Kristine is also, although she's very logical, very mature, she's also a little inflexible with how she wants things to go. So as long as there is a realistic compromise and something that makes sense, I think that they can do well. You know, he's not necessarily ideal for her in terms of what she would write down on a piece of paper, but given that, you know, they're in this experiment, we'll see. But I definitely think that they have the most potential. So that's Keith and Kristine. And last but not least, we have Luke and Kate. So Luke and Kate, you know, the plot thickens with Luke and Kate because she was almost out of there in terms of talking about wanting a divorce and finally finding her voice and her value. And he circles back and brings her back by saying he doesn't want this. And all of a sudden they're in this good space. And I use that term very loosely. We find out yesterday that Luke has been lying about their dynamic in their relationship, and now it makes sense why we've watched Kate be so confused. Like, I know all of us have watched her and we're like, what is going on? Like, why can't she get this? Like, how could she build feelings for someone who has treated her so poorly? Well, she ends up calling Dr. Pepper to confide in her that they have had sex, and they've been having sex since the honeymoon, I believe. And Luke will initiate these things. And Luke swore her to secrecy, not to say anything, but she just couldn't hold on to it. And it all makes sense. And from her perspective, Luke is very cold and distant and goes to another room and really shut down for about 2 hours after the sexual experience with her, but at times he will initiate it. So there's a lot of abuse and manipulation and trauma happening, and I just feel really bad for Kate because I don't think that, you know, long ago I didn't think she would get out of this experiment unscathed, but I definitely didn't know it was as bad as it is now. And it just leads to you really seeing Luke for who he is. There's a number of reasons why, and there's so many things that I think of when I think of why he would shut down like that, and why he initiates that and pulls away and plays those games. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about him to make an assessment, and I like to be logical about, you know, a lot of my perspective here is therapeutic in the sense of like, this is what I see happening, but that's only what I can see and what I can put together. I can't put anything together with Luke, like in terms of really why he would do that. There's some ideas, but I would want some more information and dialogue from Luke to really be able to assess him. But that's also part of the problem. You know, she is with someone and she is intimate with someone who plays this game and who's very manipulative and very, you know, abusive in some ways. Due to the way that he handles her, the way he controls her. He controls that whole experience for her, and she's not allowed to communicate about things that it's a very twisted dynamic. It really, really is. And there's a lot that he's not saying. And so that's also frustrating for her because she doesn't know anything about him. She's sleeping with him, literally, and she doesn't know anything about who he is and what his dynamic is and why he's doing what he's doing. And, you know, I don't know if they're going to talk to him. I didn't watch the previews. I don't watch the previews, but I would hope that somebody would get into having a conversation with him because it's twisted. It's beyond him being a bad guy or being a jerk or he's taking advantage. It's like, it's jumped leaps and bounds to me. And she's very scarred and very fragile, and it makes sense. You know, the last few episodes I was saying, you know, I want her to take some accountability and be an advocate for herself. And although it's difficult, step up, make the decision, but it makes more sense as to why she is limited in her ability because there's all these things going on. So then with this going on, it brings to the forefront to me that there's a lot more probably going on that we just will never know. And those are affecting her actions as well. So Luke and Kate just continue to be really sad. That's the only thing I have for them. I mean, she is holding on to a morsel of hope, and they have a decent time. You know, if we didn't see everything we saw this whole season, then them at the waterfalls would be cute, and we're seeing them together, but it's just a facade, and she's sitting here holding on to the minutes before she has to let him know that she, you know, told Dr. Pepper what they had been going through and what he asked her not to share. And for sure, he'll turn it around on her and shut her out. And it's just more manipulation and control and abuse, because he really should have never put her in that position. And it'll be done. I will be surprised if he responds any other way. So it was just sad, because she's stopping time and hoping to stop time. And it makes sense where all this connection is in a very toxic relationship. So that is Luke and Kate. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how this goes, though. So let me know what you guys think. As always, thanks for watching. Hi to all my new subscribers. I really love interacting with you guys. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can find out when I first put up these videos. And everyone have a great week.